Welcome to Netsmart CareThreads, a podcast where human services and post-acute leaders across the healthcare continuum come together to discuss industry trends, challenges, and opportunities. Listen as we uncover real stories about how to innovate and improve the quality of care for the communities we serve. Let's get into the show.
Welcome to today's episode of the Netsmart Podcast. My name is Hannah Patterson, Vice President and General Manager here at Netsmart, and I am your host today. I am super excited about our guest, Marty from Netsmart's most recent acquisition, Telus. And the topic for today's episode is electronic visit verification, or otherwise known as EVV, and how it really impacts our providers today. We'll spend some time on covering what it is, some items around the 21st Century Cures Act mandate that will require it and for whom. And for the rest of our conversation, we will explore the silver lining for providers. But first and foremost, Joe, thank you so much for being here. Will you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Perfect. Thank you so much for letting me on the podcast. Really excited about sort of this jump into the podcast community. So I'm actually a former provider myself. Currently, I'm a client alignment executive with now Netsmart. So that's a recent title that I just recently received. But before I was a vice president of business development with Telus. And what brought me to Telus is, as a former provider, I saw where EVV was going. I had about 1,300 caregivers that we had to wrap our whole culture around to get them on EVV. And I'm telling you, it wasn't easy in the beginning, but the information that we received because of EVV and what happened because of EVV was really astounding to us as an agency, just to provide better care, quality care, and give a lot of tracking internally. So I saw what Telus was doing in the industry, and I wanted to jump on board and have a bigger impact of what EVV was going to do all across America.
Yeah, that's great. And can you give us a little bit of history on Telus, the company itself?
Yeah, so Telus actually was started as an application for a provider. And as they were going through the different aspects of being a great application, EVV actually was associated in Florida, and they had to start using EVV. At that point, there was another vendor, and they were looking at what they wanted to do with that vendor and how to be compliant. And an RFP came from the state. Telus said, let's go after that RFP. We have a great product. We think we know what we're doing, and we applied for it, and we got it. So we won that RFP, and with that RFP, we were able to get numerous MCOs across the state, and now all the way across the country with numerous states and MCOs. So really working not only with the provider, but the states and the MCO plans.
That's great. And with the Netsmart acquisition, I know we have providers in our space that are anxious about the mandate. What have you experienced to date as part of the process that you can share with our listeners?
Yeah, so really, the great news is we're going from more of that startup phase to being really solidified and getting a lot of resources from Netsmart. So we're really excited because that was one thing as a growing company. You're always just trying to fill holes and make things work. Or now we're getting a lot of some of the strategic aspects of a larger company that really knows what they're doing and giving those resources to us to make a great product and a great customer user experience.
I love that. Thank you so much for bringing that up. I think there are still a great deal of providers that are extremely concerned about the mandate, even some who don't completely understand really what EVV is. Can you explain it a little bit and tell us who is actually impacted by the mandate?
Yeah, that's perfect. And in fact, I had 2 calls today with people that have been using a system and didn't even know the mandate was happening in certain states. So really what EVV is electronic visit verification, as you mentioned earlier. And there was a federal mandate called the Cures Act that initiated to be ready in 2019. They gave everyone a year to 2020. And then they said, if you want to make sure EVV is going and not in place, they gave everyone an extra year waiver that's going to be going into effect in January 1st of 2021. And that's for personal care services, home health aid, caregivers, PCA workers, community direct workers, waiver program workers, all those ones that are more the non-skilled, and in some states even skilled, to go into effect for that January 1st deadline. And really what they're trying to get is from EVV, they want to know really what's going on in the home more real time. When the service happened, the location of the service, the time and the service begins and ends, the identity of the person doing the service and the one receiving the service, and what service that was. Maybe it's a caregiving, homemaking service, nursing service. They really want to have those aspects and start collecting that information to provide the best care. And now it's going to be done all electronically instead of on timesheets.
Yeah, that's great. So you mentioned the 21st Century Cures Act, and there was a delay or a waiver that was provided for those agencies that are performing personal care services. So is it a global, or is it, I guess, a statewide mandate for January 1st, 2021, or are there states that are, exceptions to part of this regulatory change and shift?
Yeah, so the federal mandate says everyone has to start using an EVV system January 1st, 2021. So really, every agency needs to look at that, and every state's a little different on how they're rolling it out. Some are saying you have to collect the information, and they're going to aggregate it later. Others are going to be by audit. So really, you need to go through each state and figure out what your state wants. Or you can call Netsmart. We can look at exactly where your state is at and give you the best direction to know where you need to go in the future.
Yeah, we definitely see a lot of that in the healthcare industry itself, especially in the national pandemic that we've been. So totally understand the regulations are constantly evolving, and it can be extremely challenging to keep up, especially nowadays. So we all know that change is hard, right? So one of the valuable reasons we had you on the podcast is because you've had a different take on the mandate. Being a provider yourself, as you mentioned, how do you see that this mandate can become a silver lining for providers?
Yeah, that's a great question. And to be honest, when we first started EVV, I was probably like every other caregiving organization and said, what in the world? This is more regulation. We're already not making enough money, and now they want more regulation and more burden on a provider. And as I started looking at what EVV really tracks, it was really what already needed to be tracked that no one put on paper or no one put into the sphere of collection. So we really looked at it as we started rolling it out because we had to, and started finding efficiencies that we got in regards to the offices. So one big efficiency that we got is paper timesheets or something that was taking at least 2 or 3 full-time people every week to manage, just in one of my offices. Because you have to figure, they have to come in, they have to do the service, they have to get a paper timesheet, they have to go to the office, turn that timesheet in, someone has to record all that in the computer, and if there's any errors, they have to call the caregiver back and say, looks like there's an error, you have to come back and get this filled out so we can make sure you get paid and make sure we're able to bill. Now with EVV, we get all of that data right on a device, sent right to our back-end administrative tool. So it really took a lot of those people's just painstaking work and made it very simple. And now we get that every day instead of every week to provide even more efficiency. So it's really a great program. One of the other big things that we had is plan of cares. If you've operated a caregiver agency, usually you call the caregiver and say, hey, I have a new client for you. Come pick up the plan of care. Great, we pick up the plan of care. We meet with that caregiver in the office for a half hour, review all the materials, then they go out and have to do that whole paper timesheet thing. Now, all of that data from the plan of care can be loaded into a device, sent to that device, and they have it all right then. So they're able to look with the client themselves, review all their tasks, get a signature, make sure that visit's done every day. And the great thing now, if you did those 4 hours on the caregiving on that plan of care, you're able to send it directly and start billing every day instead of every week, every 2 weeks, or every 3 weeks, like other agencies do. So it can really speed up not only direct delivery care, but then the billing process. So it just started revolutionizing as we went day and day. It seems like every 2 weeks we're coming up with a new epiphany of, wow, this is actually really great. Why didn't we start some of this earlier?
Yeah, that's extremely helpful, and to hear your take on this. So I can absolutely think of a few providers that we work with that would love to have this sophistication to make sure that they're reducing, burden on the field staff, improving efficiencies in care, and obviously speed up their reimbursement, and really hadn't thought of a way to do this before. So you think that the requirement could be a blessing in disguise for providers?
So honestly, this is what we came up with, is we looked at this regulation, and at first we had the grumpy face until you started realizing everything this could do. And really the bottom line was, now, before, we would have probably 20 complaints a week. It was a large agency, so that's still a small percentage of people not getting the service that they thought they deserved, people leaving early that we could never track, maybe a caregiver not showing up on time, where now real time, you're able to get that data and start really making good decisions and improve your quality scores, not only from a healthy standpoint, but just customer service. So we were able to get a lot more smiley faces and recommendations for clients because now they're actually getting the service that they're supposed to. While before it was always back end, wait for the complaint, which if you're already getting a complaint, you're already losing the game. If you can stem all those off because now you're providing that real-time data to your caregivers and your clients, it made a world of difference and really has been the silver lining, not only for my agency, but numerous agencies that I've talked to that are really doing EVV and doing it right.
Yeah, such great information. So you mentioned a little bit on the provider side. Do you think that staff will be happier with not having to come and submit their, time slip on a daily basis or a weekly basis for their ability of getting paid?
Well, so I think everyone just has to look at it, and time is money. And if I can eliminate me going to my office, so I think there's two aspects. So I'm going to back up. There's two aspects. I have the office staff that they deal with hundreds of call-offs a week, and they deal with the client, the caregivers and the nurses coming in and having issues, where now they all can look at a computer screen and make sure that service was done. So that's saving a whole bunch of headache, phone calls, and issues in the office. Now we take the caregiver that up until this point, as I said earlier, they're coming in the office to get their plan of care. Then they're going to see the client. Then every week they either have to mail in or come in the office and turn their timesheet in, review it with someone in the office. That's anywhere from 15, 20, 30 minutes to sometimes hours every month, where now they don't have to do any of that. They're going to be able to send it right through the application, have all their hours adjusted. And really, that's what we found is many of the caregivers, once they found other caregivers that were using the app and basically said, wait, you don't have to go to the office every week anymore? You don't have to turn in your timesheet? Well, why am I not using EVV? And that was really the spurn that changed everything for us, is we had some great caregivers that started using the app, and they found the efficiencies of, I haven't been to the office in 2 months, while the other caregivers go in there every week, and really started getting those caregivers to turn to EVV to help them have more time in their busy lives.
Yeah, such wonderful information for our listeners. And thank you, as always, for taking the time with me today. I know we've been hearing so many things and concerns over mandates, and it's been refreshing and super enlightening to hear how they can actually be beneficial. So do you have any parting words or thoughts or comments for those listeners on the line today?
Yeah, so I do want to just make one thing clear, because, we talk about efficiencies and regulations. But I feel like the biggest reason we all got into this industry is we want to help people. We have, whether it's children, adults, those with disabilities, they need this extra help to be able to live every day. And we got into this to help them. And with these regulations, we're actually going to be able to help them even more. The goal of EV is to provide those better outcomes, to have that real-time visibility in visits, to make sure they're getting the best care possible. And really, that's the thing that we want to look at, is the finish line is really providing the best care and having the best outcome for these clients. And with EVV, they're actually going to be able to start doing that and provide the best care and make sure that these people are getting everything that they deserve and really work with them to get everything that they want in life through the services that are provided.
Yeah, such wonderful insight. Thank you so much for being here, Joe. I sincerely appreciate it.
Absolutely. I love being here, and I look forward to any time we can get online and talk about how EVV can help people.
Well, thank you all for listening and for joining of this episode of the CareThreads Podcast. If you have any more information that you're inquiring, please visit the ntsp.com website to hear more about solutions that Telus or Netsmart can offer you as providers. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
At Netsmart, we understand the challenges facing provider organizations. Our team will help you navigate changing value-based care models with solutions and services that make person-centered care a reality. We'll equip you with technology and services that provide holistic, real-time views of care histories that inform better decision-making and better outcomes. Visit us today at ntst.com. Netsmart, serving you so you can serve others. Thanks for listening to the Netsmart CareThreads podcast. Through collaboration and conversation, we can work together to make healthcare more connected than ever before and better support the communities we serve. To ensure you never miss an episode, please subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast player. If you use Apple Podcasts, we'd love for you to give us a quick rating for the show. Just tap the number of stars that you think the podcast deserves. Until next time.